Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Joe Delacruz. This is Thursday's edition of Born Political. I've had a lot of folks from a lot of different walks of life come through this table and sit down and share their life experience with me. I'm excited for this guest a lot. And again, you're going to say, you always say you're excited, but I have a lot of great guests. And this one in particular, we've crossed paths through the work of Community Speaks Out that Tammy and I do. It's become our life passion. We've been doing it for 7 years. We feel like we've created a safe space for a lot of families and friends and people that are in recovery, people that are still struggling, where they come to us once a month, and they share their stories with us. We've expanded to youth groups, and we're doing sober activities. But we're also becoming a platform. And my guest tonight, I think, is going to be part of that. I'm very hopeful where we have a meeting planned for next week, and we have these bold ideas of actually sharing stories, success stories, and not forcing people to think, hey, I'm right because of this. We're going to prove it. We're going to prove it because we're going to share stories of success. This person tonight I'm going to interview, he himself is in recovery. And I was just very impressed with when he was able to share his story at our last meeting. Without further ado, Erich Spader, welcome to the show. Born Political, how are you?
Good, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so off camera we talked. The show normally I talk about who the person is, and we try to figure out how you got your views and where you came from. So I think it's important that people know that, where you're from.
All right, like, I'm from here.
Excellent.
Local kid, grew up in Groton, left for a while due to the military. Like I was in the Army National Guard and I moved around, went through some deployments, and then hit a rough patch, came home to get like family support and try to get my life back together, but it didn't happen the way I thought it would. And it took me a little bit more time to enter the community that we speak about, the recovery community that I'm a full-fledged member of, right? Like I earned my seat, right? And I participate in my recovery, and like meeting you and Tammy through Community Speaks Out the way we did, has like ignited a passion in me for like trying to expand the recovery community, or actually like really connect it. Like it already exists.
And we're going to be there to do that.
Exactly.
So you went to elementary school, and
I
you're
did.
a Groton and a Fitch guy.
I'm gonna let you know, like Eastern Point, I grew up by the golf course.
Okay.
I used to,
nice place to live.
Yeah, it was not that in the okay section.
Yeah.
Walking to Eastern Point Beach. I grew up there on dollar footlongs and French fries.
Yeah.
Went to West Side Middle School. I was
Marion
the first.
Galbraith, was she ever a teacher?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
oh,
she's a reading
wow.
teacher.
The mayor.
Yep. I also lived across the street from Dolores Arbor. Like that was, another previous mayor.
Harbor. I know Dee well too.
Yeah. They were all
on RTM with
neighbors, good
Yep.
neighbors. Yep.
Yep.
Swam in their pool regularly as a kid. And then I went to Fitch.
Yeah.
And I was like just average, like student, average output. So I had to find other means, which is I joined the National Guard and then like had a career.
What inspired you to join National Guard? Was your family in the service? Did they serve, or is it just?
No. It was like, you're not getting good grades. We're not going to help you. And I was like, I don't need you. I don't need you. I'll do it my own. I signed up, and the only reason my parents found out is because I was only 17, so they had to give me permission to join the National Guard. So that's how they found out. And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'll do it on my own. And so started.
National Guard, I think when most people sign up for a National Guard, they think, because you said deployments, and most people think they're going to be deployed to Connecticut and kind of live.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people are shocked that oftentimes National Guard are the first to leave. So where were you deployed? What?
Yeah, so like I was at the AVCRAD,
Yep.
And I ended up working full time there. Like I started to have a family, married a local girl, and we started our life. I worked at the AVCRAD full time as a helicopter mechanic, electrician. They weren't paying great at that time.
Yep.
So I moved to New Hampshire, joined the New Hampshire National Guard, same story, kept getting, and then like the post 9/11 world meant like National Guard was getting deployed, right? So that's what happened. Went to Bosnia for a rotation, went back to New Hampshire. I was like, it's winter all year here, so I'm gonna leave. We decided to move to Arizona because you can't shovel sunshine. So we moved to Arizona, joined the National Guard, and then was deployed to Iraq. And then like life fell apart after that, and I came back home.
And you know, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And you know, that's a very common story with folks that go and see things that most people will never see or experience in their life. So we do thank you for that. And you know, you came back and you got involved with drugs in one form or another, whatever happened. I got to hear your whole entire story, and that's a story that if you one day have time to come to our Community Speaks Out meetings, we have folks that share stories that are similar to yours, that are different than yours. They all have their own unique.
For sure.
Yeah, everything's unique about every story, and everything's unique about everyone's recovery.
Right.
And what we have to do is, and I think that you and I, we talked off air a lot, and we talked in our meetings of how meeting people at where they are, and not being rigid with how we do treatment, with how we, you know, how we expect what we expect from people. If you have a loved one that's in addiction out there, it's not going to match what your friend's neighbor's kid did.
Exactly.
And I think that's what we're trying to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. So like, I mean, like, I've been like talking a lot like about how the disease, and I'm a full believer in the disease model of addiction, is equitable, right? The disease doesn't care where you started, what you're doing. No. The disease of addiction affects everybody and brings everybody to the same point, which is like as close to death as you can be without dying, if you're fortunate, right? And we know we could speak about overdoses and all that's happening around the country right now. But all of us get to the same point, which is like something needs to change. And then recovery is also equitable, right? Like it can bring you to the best place in your life, and it will. Because the best place in my life is not using drugs today. So I want to share that. But what I also want to share is like the idea of open-mindedness to all paths to recovery. I think it's critical for us to embrace all avenues for addicts to stop their suffering, and that's how it happened, right?
Yeah, it's amazing because my son brought it to us, and I think I told you too off air. Is initially you think, how could this happen to us? We love our son so much that this couldn't happen to him, or we thought we were just this good family that it doesn't happen to good families and good people. And then even in his recovery, you know, when he was on Suboxone, I just had this feeling in my stomach of, well, he's not really there. And I struggled with every little step in addiction. But it was the day that I was able to say, you know what, because I was really frustrated one day and he was sleeping late and he still wasn't able to hold a job. Sure. He was in early recovery. And one day I said, you know what, for me to just change my mind on this disease, I'm going to treat it as if he had stage 4 cancer. And I'm going to let his doctor treat it the way he's treating it or she's treating it. And I'm going to not stand out of the way, but I'm going to learn about it. And that was our whole goal. And the way we learned about it was inviting people into that meeting at Community Speaks Out. I mean, we've had police officers sitting in watching. Mm-hmm. We've had day reporters while a police officer that met a father that had just Narcaned his daughter that morning. Like, and everything was wide open. There was no, you can't say this, you can't say that.
Right. Exactly.
Like, and I think the way I solved it, I modeled it after my family. My family will tell you if, you know, you need to put your shoes on because your feet don't smell right. Or like my family will tell you those things. And I said, you know what, let's do it that way. And when we asked Joey to speak as a very young, early in recovery person, we got some pushback from folks that were in recovery for a long time saying, you need to keep this quiet, it's his recovery and he has to, and I understood their model because but we were trying to change that because the amount of kids that are dying, the amount of kids we see suffering, it can't be silent anymore. The stigma just has to go away. And that's what we're going to try to do, sharing these stories and what you do when you come out and you share your story. I don't think you understand the impact it has. I know you say you're trying to help folks that went through what you did, but I don't think you can really understand the impact it has on parents, on families that are trying to help somebody. Because when we look at you, you're someone that's still standing and you're someone that's talking and breathing. And that's all we want for our loved ones.
Absolutely. Like like we call it, where I get most of my recovery from is a 12-step fellowship. Yeah. But it's just also part of the Venn diagram that is Erich's recovery. Like my whole life is my recovery today. You know what I mean? Like the way I take care of my children, the way I am with my wife, right? Like that relationship, my Narcotics Anonymous family. That is all like an avenue for recovery for me, and it can't be like overstated that there are so many paths to recovery, and that we need to share them all. Because like, if we continue to operate in silos instead of as a community of recovery, we will continue to see what we're seeing today, which is like through the roof. Yeah, like I like share this statistic, like our since COVID, since the pandemic, right? The life expectancy in the United States has gone down 2 years.
Amazing.
2 years because of COVID, suicides, and overdoses. 2 years in a 3-year period is incredible. And like, we can directly affect those areas, right? Like we can. Like, I'm not here to talk about like vaccinations and like covering your mouth when you cough.
Yeah.
I'm here to talk about like, you can find recovery. Like, recovery is like available to everybody, and there's a million ways to do it. I love refuge recovery. I love Community Speaks Out. I love Reliance Health and the work they do. I love police officers teaching parents how to use Narcan to save their children. I love all of that.
Yep.
Because like, there's like this like frame of thought where we're like, oh, like, why would I use Narcan? Teach people how, that's like encouraging, like overdosing is okay. No, that's not what it is. No. What it is giving somebody the opportunity to live to the day they make the decision that drugs are not an answer for them.
Yep.
Like,
you can't give up. Right?
Exactly,
I think that's
exactly.
And I think it's easy for people on the outside. If it's crazy, because I spoke last night at a gun.
Yes.
It was Sandy Hook, and we were talking about how many lives were lost, and how I didn't get involved, even though I had an uncle that was addicted his whole life, and he was somewhat of a major role model in my life. Mm-hmm. And I had a cousin who had died of a drug overdose, and I don't think I even went to the funeral. I mean, this was back in the 90s. It just wasn't, it's like, oh, it didn't affect me until it like really hit home. And it did affect me, but it didn't. I guess I didn't realize, looking back at the trauma that I had over, a cousin and then an uncle, and watching that. And then, but it was really, it's like my call to action was all of a sudden with my son, when it was that close. And we can't wait that long anymore. We can't wait for our sons or our family, because the little help that you give somebody today, you're not gonna, if you join a group right now, you come to Community Speaks Out, and you become an ally and help, but you don't have someone addicted, there's no guarantee that your son or daughter or your loved one's not gonna become addicted, but you may help somebody else that doesn't. And maybe we spread this, and because what are the odds that you're gonna be the one that says the right thing to your kid? We just hope that some other adult out there takes initiative and says, you know what? Don't do this or don't do that, right. or they're working with your kid, and that's how it is. It's so old because it takes a village, and everyone goes, I hate that. But it actually is exactly.
No, it does. Like, we're
exactly what we need
we're social
to do.
creatures. Like that. Like, it's those cliches and expressions don't come from anything but truth and experience, right? Like, that it does take a village. If I thought I knew all the answers to like raising my children, man, I would not do it right. Like, you know what I mean? It's not.
They wouldn't come out so
exactly,
good.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Without a doubt. So I think like increasing awareness about the resources available to everyone, whether it's an addict themselves or a family member, a partner, spouse, right? Like, everybody, community involvement, and increased awareness of the available resources will eventually start saving lives. Like you could turn it over, right? What doesn't work, though, I believe, because I see it, is resources working in silos, right?
It doesn't work in anything. You talked about it at work,
exactly.
right?
Knowledge sharing is the key.
At your job, you're an electrician at working on a helicopter. You can't be you can't just be running that 5 foot of wire,
right.
And that's what you're concerned with, because you have to think of the whole system.
Right.
And you have to talk to other people that know.
And I don't even, that all areas of our life, it doesn't matter what you do, but knowledge sharing is key, that's how we grow. And to think that some organizations are like, this is how we've always done it, this is how we're going to continue to do it, and we're going to stay over here, well, you're not being part of the greater solution. There's a greater solution than only your way, and we need to like connect the various solutions to increase the potential. Like it's super simple. Like
I think you and I both served in Harvard.
Yes, we did.
And as cynical as most people can be, I think if you've ever been to Harvard, I was as a legislator, you were up there working.
Yeah.
And I think when you actually see the amount of work to understand that when you're elected and there's 3.5 million people that you're serving, to see in a committee room people that come up and share their story and how the same issue that you might have thought one way about something until you heard two different people speak about it.
Right.
And then you understood it a little bit better. It does happen.
Yes.
Most people think it doesn't. And I think that's what opens our eyes a little bit. I got to see that, and I know you were in the trenches.
So I was. It's funny that you say that. Like the story I share with people about that experience, I started out as an intern, as like an adult college student, and then got hired the next year on the other side of the aisle. Like not a thing to me. Like they offered me a job, right?
Wherever.
So like, and I worked in like communications. I did like a lot of graphic design work and like running around like for various committees. But I remember specifically like Governor Malloy pitching the budget and the year that we were going to get rid of like car property tax.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yep.
And like the bitter energy that was on the floor.
Yeah.
And then when that ended, right? Because that's on TV and like people and reporters are watching, right? When that ended, I remember going back into the office behind the chamber and like seeing like both sides of the aisle work together to like get the budget the right way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like I don't even want to do that. Like I want to skip that part, like the theatrics part, and I just want resources to come together for a common cause, which is to save lives. And we have so many components right now.
Yeah.
We have so many components. Let's work together. And I think we've gotten.
I've seen a huge shift just from when we first got involved.
Absolutely.
And that was, and what we had guilt and my guilt came from me thinking, well, geez, I didn't go to my cousin's funeral. Why? Because he had died and it was 1998, and if you did something like that to yourself, that was kind of your fault. And then I actually apologized to my uncle. I was like thinking, you know what, I should have been there. Like, why wouldn't I have been? I was also young and not thinking probably properly, but. In the end, I want to talk about what our project is because I'm excited about that. And hopefully, if you're out there listening and you want to share your story, because your story could help somebody else, not could, will. I don't know which person it's going to affect, but we've actually done school night things at school with parents to try to address the drug issue. And we'd show up and we'd have 5 people on the stage and we'd have a doctor there and we'd have a moderator and it'd be 5 people in the audience. And this was when we were in the middle of the pandemic and not the COVID pandemic, the epidemic of what we're facing now.
Right.
And someone would say, Joe, I'm sorry that you all you guys came here and there's only 5 people. The 5 people that were there needed to be there, right? And the one person that came up that we were able to help. That's all that really needed. And this person is still a member of our group, still someone that's really, because of course her loved one was in addiction. And I really think the way that we solve it, instead of getting into a room and fighting about why each other's right, is us just screaming from the rooftop of why we're right, of not why we're right, of what we've seen. Right. What we know to be a fact, that we know that people can find recovery.
Exactly.
And how sharing these stories is going to show how every single recovery is different. And what I've noticed the most, and as a parent, when someone like you stands up in front of us and you share your story, inevitably a parent will go up to that person and say something as random as, "What was the weather? Was it spring, summer, or fall?
Like that's
was
a
it
factor.
Was it snowing or was it? Because if it was winter, maybe we should try this intervention on my son in the winter because we grasp at everything.
Right.
And when we try to focus on the little things like that, I think we're missing the big picture. And the big picture is every single family, every single recovery dynamic is different.
It is.
And these stories, hopefully, people will send in stories. Erich is going to be our writer-ish, kind of like getting the story together so it's in a, not changing someone's story.
No, absolutely not.
But helping them get it together. And hopefully, like, we're going to give it a platform on Community Speaks Out. And your story, I'm hoping, is going to be our first story.
Yes.
And we're going to launch that in the next couple months. We're going to get a few stories built up. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm super excited. Like the idea, so like what I loved mostly about the idea when you and Tammy were first talking about it, and you touched a little bit on it earlier, is like the reduction of stigma, right? There's like this stigma there's so much stigma attached to what an addict is and isn't, that if you knew my story, you would maybe be like taken aback.
Yep.
Like, I had an almost 6-figure job. I was dressed in business casual. My wife and I have 2 nice cars. We had dogs. We have children. We have a nice house on Route 1 in Mystic, right?
Yep.
And I was just a junkie, like plain and simple.
Yep.
I was not any different. The way I operated my life, getting and using drugs was my primary purpose, and that is no different than the stereotype of the kid hanging out under the bridge with a needle in his arm. Like, I was brought to the same place. That's why I talk about the disease is equitable.
With the exception that you also fit the stereotype of someone that was doing the right thing every day in the perception.
Exactly, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. And exactly. The stigma is wrong. Like, that is like one, like, stereotypes, they also say come from somewhere, but the stereotypes we have about what an addict is and isn't are false.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. Because every walk of life, every type of person has the opportunity to be an addict. I mean, like, we could talk about the science and it's in our DNA. Like, yes, I also believe that. But what I'm saying is, we don't know who does and doesn't have that gene. So you're always one drink, one sniff, one inhale away from being an addict that might be functional for a while, like I was. Years, 8 years of functional. 8 years. I lived a life where people in my own home had no idea. No idea what I was doing, right? So what's the stigma? If you saw me on the street, you'd be like, oh, look at that guy's got it together, right? And then you see the woman with her kids taken away on the corner in New London, like outside the shelter, right? And you're like, oh, that's an addict. And you're like, no, you know what? She's clean today.
Yep.
She's just getting her life back on track.
Yep.
So you don't, like, the stigmas are wrong. And like, so the opportunity to share those type of stories about, like, we call them in our fellowship, experience, strength, and hope, like, will bring a whole nother level of what an addict is and isn't and was and wasn't to an audience that can then start identifying where in their life they're seeing this, and it will help people. Absolutely, it will help
as
people.
these stories come out, and what I'm hopeful of is story after story is again, it's not going to reflect your loved one if you're going through it and you're at home and you're not going to read the story that exactly matches yours, but you're going to hear some of the things that your loved one said to you that exactly matches sometimes, in the manipulation that happened, all those things that happen. We were never prepared for this disease as parents, as family members of loved ones. You're not prepared because the obvious answer to this disease is the person just stops doing it, right? And that's what you hear from the outside now. But we're changing that, and what I'm really excited about is the stories combined with, I think, science is catching up. When you say that everyone's different, scientifically now, we had a member of our group come and say, hey, I had my son take a test, and this young man was addicted, and he said, I was absolutely floored when, after a blood test, and they did a genome test, that there was a list of pills, and he had a 90% chance that if he took Percocet, that he would become addicted to it. That happened to be this young man's drug of choice. And what really struck this gentleman was he's looking at the graph, and he said, Joe, you're always standing up there talking about how ibuprofen is the wonder drug. And for me, I remember when I first got involved, he said, guys, just take ibuprofen for everything. My knee hurts, it's good. Mouth pain, it's good. He said, and you'd say those things, and in my head, I think, ibuprofen does nothing for me, right? And on his son's chart, it said the likelihood that ibuprofen would help him was almost zero.
Right.
And that naproxen should be the thing. So we're going to find out. I always think about the Star Trek movie when, they went back in time and the guy's going through a hospital and there's a woman hurt on the bed. And the guy goes, we're going to drill a hole in her head. He goes, my God, what are you, barbarians? And he gives her this one pill and she's up and she's cured, right? And science will get there, but there is no replacement for love and for stories because it has to be part of it.
The spiritual side of recovery,
That's
critical for me where I'm at. That's how we meet, right? Like I only get the opportunity to sit in this chair and work with CSO and the work I do in the other organization I'm part of because the spirit of recovery. That's what also I've been sharing about. There's a community and a spirit of recovery, right? And they can both grow. They're like living things all on their own to me, and they need to be connected to be able to grow.
In a certain sense, we're making those little connections already. I just think of our recovery holiday party that we just had.
Amazing.
I mean, we had 120 people. It was at the Elks Club. I want to thank everybody that was involved in that because
it was so good.
I still think of it every day. I mean, because we had a great time, and it was just a special night. We've done galas before, and we've done a lot of different events, but that was just one where people in recovery all got together, and it was sober homes that are on two different sides, and they got to meet each other. They normally don't see each other from different sober homes, but there was a sense of community there.
That's a stigma reduction. Like that's part of the story to like reduce the stigma of what an addict is and isn't. How many people were there?
120.
120 people committing zero crimes.
Zero crimes.
Zero crimes, right? Like you want to throw that to the people who think that's what an addict is, right?
Yeah.
That's 120 people all in one place, no illegal activity going on.
And the ripples that happened.
Yes.
Because to me, when people, even the thought of a sober home, I think a lot of people have negative connotations in their head. But what I see happen in sober homes are people that are loving each other. People somebody falls off. I've seen these guys jump in cars and go find them and bring them back.
Absolutely.
That's what family does.
Exactly.
Right? Not all families either. I mean, but
it's
become a family. And I used to say to my son when he was coming back, and he'd say all these things about him that he didn't realize. I said, man, as a young person, you're finding more about your life than as me as a 45-year-old man. I didn't know. I mean, I'm 51 now. I know a lot more. We have 1 minute. I told you.
Oh my God, so fast. That's crazy.
Right? This is fast.
Yeah.
So I gotta thank you for coming on, and we will have you on again.
I love it.
And we talked about you possibly doing your own show. I think you would be great.
I think the opportunity to do like a recovery community
Absolutely.
show, like the word has to keep getting out. Like in the organization I run, they're old school. We're already looking to social media because it's 2022. So let's act like it's 2022, right? Like,
you have to do that.
Exactly.
Not everybody wants to do that, but
you have to.
It's just the way it works. So next week, I almost have my Fitch Robotics shirt on. Next week we have a couple students from Fitch Robotics and a mentor. You guys are gonna get to find out about that program and how much it's meant to the community. Because if you haven't been there, you wouldn't know. You missed the pancake breakfast last Saturday, but there's another pancake breakfast this Saturday for the. I think it's the band. It doesn't matter who it's for. I'm going. I love pancakes. So, anyway, guys, thank you for watching. That's your edition of Born Political, and I will see you next Thursday. Thank you so much for being on the show.
I appreciate it.
Brother, I really appreciate it.
Thank
That
you
was
so much.
great. Great coming on. And I'll see you again.
You will.